you're all doing well and getting ready for Rahu's transit in Krittika Nakshatra. And today we have Kṣaṇāti with us, and we're going to be discussing about Rahu being in Krittika Nakshatra. Namaste, Kṣaṇāti, and welcome.
Namaste, Navjeet. It's so good to be here with you and the astrological community today to discuss the very exciting and incredibly intense and powerful transit of Rahu in Krittika. It's a very long transit until the middle of June of next year. So we're going to do a 3-part series to discuss it in full and thorough detail. In the first part of the series today, we're going to discuss the dates of the transit, when it's going to start in Taurus, when it's going to transit to the Aries side of Krittika, and when it's going to move out of Krittika into Krittika Nakshatra. And then I'm going to discuss some of the energetics of what it means for the general population and the world that we're in for Rahu going into Krittika, both on the Taurus side and in the Aries side. In our second video, we're going to do the Rahu in Krittika transit in Taurus and in Aries for all ascendants. We're going to do half of the ascendants first in the second part, and then the other half of the ascendants in the second part. And you'll be able to keep track of when it's in Taurus, how that will affect your ascendant, what's in an Aries, how that will affect your ascendant, because it's really going to be a profound and transformative time for all of us. So I'm really excited. I think I'd like to start today with the chant to Rahu to invoke the auspicious energies and beneficial side of Rahu to help give us some insight into this transit.
Thank you.
Ardakayam Mahaviryam Chandraditya Vimardinam Simhita Garbha Sambutam Tam Rahu Pranamam Yaham. Ardakayam Mahaviryam Chandraditya Vimardinam Simhita Garbha Sambutam Tam Rahu Pranamam Yaham. Ardakayam Mahaviryam Chandraditya Vimardinam Simhita Garbha Sambutam Tam Rahu Pranamam Yaham. Om Brahm Brim Brahm Saharahave Namaha. 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 Hari Om Om Namah Shivaya. Namaste.
Beautiful.
Welcome everyone to the Rahu and Krittika 3-part series, Transit Analysis, a collaboration of Dr. Arjun Pai Astrology with Nav and my channel, Kṣaṇāti Jyotish. I'm very excited. So I'm just going to share my screen for a moment to elaborate on the different aspects of this transit and the dates. So today, when we're filming this, it's September 22nd. So I wanted to give everyone a little bit of a heads up before the transit starts, but it's a long transit, so you'll be able to get constant updates on it through the different parts of this video. This transit will start on October 5th of this year. So from this date, it's about 2 weeks away. That's on a Tuesday it's going to start. And that's when Rahu will go on the 10th, past the 10th degree of Taurus into the 9th degree of Taurus in the late evening on the United States of the 5th of October. So this is where we see Rahu just starting to enter its Krittika position. Then we will find that Rahu will go into Aries on the 12th of April of 2022. So that's the 12th of April of next year. That's also a Tuesday. How interesting. We're going to see Rahu transiting out of the Taurus side of Krittika into the Aries side of Krittika. And they're totally different energies, which I'll elaborate on in just a little bit. And then we finally have the Rahu and Krittika transit ending on June 14th, which is also a Tuesday. That's so cool. 3 Mars K2 days in which these transits are making their huge shifts. And I use mean node calculation, by the way. So if you're using true node calculation, you might notice slightly different dates for this transit analysis. I find mean node always to be more accurate, but all sorts of different opinions on that. I did a summit on Rahu and K2 nodal summit where we discussed the debate between mean and true node, and it's about a 50-50 split. So I've always used mean node calculation. And on June 14th of next year, we're going to have Rahu leaving Krittika Nakshatra and entering Bharani Nakshatra. So that's when this kind of energy is going to be concluding and it's going to be ending. Now, for the first part of this elaboration, I want to discuss about Rahu in Taurus Krittika and what kind of energies that might mean. Now, a few things to understand about Krittika Nakshatra is it's called the cutting nakshatra. Sometimes the symbol is the sword. So it's really about cutting through things and pushing through things. It has a lot of affinity for prosperity, for ambition. It has inclinations towards fame and success and reputation. It's connected to the deity Agni Deva. Agni Deva, which is one of the foremost and premier devatas in the Vedic system. Agni representing fire, and the actual word Agni translates to fire. And so that kind of lends to the intensity of this nakshatra and the intensity of the karmas during this period. Now, it's my personal opinion, along with a lot of other well-respected astrologers that I've done work with, that Rahu is exalted in the sign of Taurus. But the question is, well, what nakshatra could that be? And I believe that Rahu's most beneficial nakshatra position in its exaltation sign of Taurus is going to be Krittika. So we are getting a maximum exaltation of Rahu during this transit. If you thought Rahu was exalted on the other side of this Rashi, then you will not believe what's in store as it works with Agni Deva. Now, some of these energies of why Rahu might be exalted in this position, as I mentioned, it has to do with success, ambition, reputation, and fame. And that's Rahu's nature. So it has this craving for power, craving for strength, craving for success. When Rahu's in Rohini, it's a little bit more dreamy and a little bit more esoteric, and we have wishes and desires of things, but they might not be manifesting. Although during that Rahu and Rohini transit, it's good to kind of begin to think about, well, what do I really want with my life? How do I really want to get to my goals? How do I really want to get to my dreams? Now with the Rahu and Krittika transit, it's time to actually get there, especially on the Taurus side, where it's going to be in its full exaltation. Now, that would mean that, everyone has different spiritual aspects. And of course, if this transit, when we get into the different ascendants, and whether it's on the Taurus or the Aries side, if it's in a more spiritual position, that's great. But one of the things that Rahu and Krittika teaches us, especially in this modern world, in this Kali Yuga that we're living in, if we want to fulfill our material potential, our spiritual potential, then we need to have material security. If we want to have a greater impact on people around us and have a greater impact on this world, we need to be powerful in order to be able to do so. That way we can reach more people. If we really want to do all of these beautiful spiritual things with our lives, then don't we want to have material security in order to be able to do that? Or do we want to have to beg for our food? Or do we want to have to be hungry for our food? Rahu and Krittika says no. So it's important to understand that over the course of that Rahu in Rohini transit, you might have been like, well, I was going in this certain direction in my life because it was whatever, you know, that seemed like the direction that I should have been going in. But now as Rahu is going into Krittika, and during Rahu and Rohini, you might have started to change like what you thought your life path was going to be, starting to get more serious about how do I take it to the next level. Rohini magnetizes attention towards you. So how can I grow my reputation to the next level? And Krittika, the cutter, the sword, is going to push you, is going to amplify you to that next level of whichever area and aim of life that Rahu and Krittika is hitting your chart in. So this is a very powerful time if it's in a material position to push you towards material success. If it is in a fame or a reputation position to push you towards that next level of respect in your community, that next level of success in your career. If you want to start a new business venture, you want to open up a business, you want to start a new asset, this is the best time to do it. When Rahu is in Krittika, if you want the manifest to and cut through all of the layers, Rahu in Krittika, it accomplishes things through shortcuts. You can think of this transit as this little period of time in which you don't have to put as much time and effort into accomplishing things. Life can be a shortcut at this time. That means a shortcut to financial success. And if it's in a spiritual position, a shortcut to material success. What if it's affecting the home that you're living in? You felt stuck in a home, you want to move. Here's a shortcut to get out of your home quicker. This is a time to actually utilize shortcuts because there's an opportunity that shortcuts and opportunities. This is a time of opportunity. That's a great word to understand Rahu in Krittika on the Taurus side. I really want to emphasize this is a beautiful time to get the most of the opportunities that life presents itself. Because during this time of Rahu and Krittika on the Taurus side, it's going to be presenting a lot of really wonderful opportunities for you to succeed, for you to cut through the barriers and issues in what you're going through in your life. So I wanted to really talk about the positive side of Rahu and Krittika, because you're going to hear a lot of astrologers talking about Rahu and Krittika, and like a lot of astrologers do, they give Rahu a bad rap. But as a Mula Trikona Rahu ascendant myself, Rahu and I are best buddies, and I really want to encourage us to have a positive outlook on Rahu before we start to talk about some of the challenges of this period, because I want to be realistic about those as well.
So, Kṣaṇāti, so even though if someone has, even though they don't have prominent Krittika Nakshatra, like or Krittika in their chart, this is going to be the general energy that's going to really play out, right? With Rahu being in Krittika.
110%, Nav. And wherever you have Taurus positioned in your chart during the Taurus transit, and wherever you have Aries positioned in your chart during the Aries transit, that's where your opportunity is. That's where you can accomplish this. That's where you can go to your next level of success during the course of this transit. So regardless of a Krittika position in the chart, obviously a Krittika aspect on one of the natal planets in your chart will have an even more profound impact. But this is affecting the entire consciousness of the world. This is an opportunity for us to break free, you know, not to get too political, but we've been dealing with this coronavirus thing for a really long time. I
Right.
believe that by the transit of Rahu and Krittika being complete, it's going to be a thing of the past. It's going to be like the flu or the cold.
Right. And then are we also going to be make sure that we're also looking at the position or transit of Sun and Venus in this, when this transits as well, right? That would
100%, because Krittika is ruled by the sun. And so the sun's position is also going to show us maybe that soul's direction or that soul's potential. And the Venus energy is going to show us, well, what do we need in our life to make us happier? Where do we need to be nourished? And how can Rahu open our mind to maybe trying new things, developing new hobbies, developing new habits that are going to provide more pleasure into our lifetimes? So we definitely want to see our natal Venus, and over the course of this transit, the transit position of the sun and Venus, to understand the intricacies of this transit on a microcosmic, on a macrocosmic level as well.
Thank you.
So just to get a little bit on the other side of the transit spectrum, Rahu, the darker side of the Rahu in Krittika transit on the Taurus side, when there's all this desire for success and power and growth financially and spiritually, something that always comes into factor here is our ego.
Mhm.
And while the Ketu is still in Scorpio during this transit, even though you want to grow to success, it's important always to stay humble and grateful for each layer of success that you have. One of the things that the Rahu and Krittika kind of dark side energy is when you get something, even though it's wonderful, you still want more. And due to the natal transit of Ketu aspecting that Rahu and Krittika, if you're not grateful for the shortcuts or opportunities that you're given during this transit, if you're not humble as you grow to more success, as you become more famous, then that Ketu in Scorpio, which is aspecting this, it is going to humble you and it's going to bring you to your knees. So it's very important to understand with great growth, with great power comes great responsibility, and a great deal of gratitude should be the mental perception that you're experiencing at that time. So as you start to get some of the things that you've always wanted, that you've been dreaming of during this Rahu and Krittika transit, you better be grateful for it, or Ketu could really take it away from you as well. So you have to keep that in mind and work with the intricacies. An opportunity is not something we deserve. An opportunity or a gift is not something that we deserved. It's a blessing from the Devatas. It's an opportunity for us to be humbly grateful for and in honor of. So it's something that we definitely want to keep in mind. That means, okay, maybe you're having trouble financially and you haven't experienced financial freedom. Now, all of a sudden, you got $100,000 or $200,000, $300,000. Well, the dark side of the Rahu and Krittika, it wants $1 million. And if it gets $1 million, then it wants 5 million. If it wants, well, why aren't I a billionaire yet? When you should remember that you used to have $5,000 in your savings account and now you have $1 million and you still want more. It might even take away that wealth that it gave you because you're not being grateful for it. You're not being in appreciation of it. So it's always be grateful for the growth that you experience during Rahu and Krittika. Another really negative aspect of this transit is that Rahu represents, and it could go positive or negative, but Rahu can represent our relationship with illusion. And so sometimes Rahu and Krittika, it can have unrealistic, idealistic goals, which end up being illusory, because when you chase something that's not realistic and it's not really meant for you, and this goes hand in hand with the gratitude, it's not really going to manifest in the way that you'd like it to. So you're constantly chasing something that's never going to manifest. This is commonly called chasing the dragon.
Yeah.
Chasing a dragon, well, you know, some people might agree differently, but dragons don't exist in this physical reality at this time. As much as you would like a dragon to exist and to breathe fire in front of you, if you're always chasing the dragon, you're going to be a little bit disappointed. So that can come with these unrealistic aspects. And also with that kind of Maya illusory thing, when it's the illusion of ego, is probably the most powerful spiritual lesson over the course of this Rahu and Krittika transit, because people are going to be rising to the next level of their career, of their next level of their financial success, of their next level of the goals that they've been wanting.
Yeah.
And as they reach that success, they're going to think, well, I earned it, and therefore I'm a great person, right? I deserve everything that I've been given. And that is an illusion. Any kind of wisdom, any kind of growth, any kind of reputation, it's a payoff of good karma. Regardless of the Rahu and Krittika position, even though it wants to deliver your material good karma to you, if you don't have good karma, it's not coming.
Mm.
But if you get the good karma that you've been working for that's coming to you, that doesn't mean to stop doing good karmic deeds. That doesn't mean to stop doing karmic acts that are beneficial, because then that positive contribution is going to wear out. It's like someone who used to be an alcoholic. Then they decide to get sober. And when then they get sober, all these beneficial things start coming into their life. They're in a happy relationship, they get a good job, they get a nice car, and they're like, well, okay, I got all those things, awesome, and those are the things I wanted. So now I'm going to go back to drinking.
Mm.
That's the trap of the Rahu and Krittika. When you make positive sacrifices in your life, which are the nature for the Rahu and Ketu, Taurus, Scorpio transit, when you make these really profound sacrifices in your life and you start to get some of the rewards of it, you need to keep doing those positive actions, or your karmic bank account is going to wear out and it's going to start going in the other direction. So that's the Rahu in Taurus, some of the general transit, which I believe is exalted. And we talked about the beneficial side of it and some of the challenges of it too. Now, I just want to begin to highlight, well, what does it mean when it's on the Aries side? How does that kind of differ? So when we see that Rahu is on the Aries side, and again, that's from April 12th of next year to June 14th, it's going to be a little bit of a different energy because it's no longer exalted, right? Rahu is now in a Mars sign. Rahu and Mars are enemies. Rahu and Venus have a decent relationship with each other, and it's an exaltation form. Now, as you're getting into a Rahu-Mars relationship, this is where things are going to start becoming a little more difficult. But we'll talk about the positive side of it, which is you're going to get a lot of momentum from the Rahu in Taurus transit in Krittika that's going to lead you to a level of success. So it's going to be pushing you. And then with that momentum, as Rahu goes into Aries, that increases more momentum. It's like someone always wanted to be a politician. And then in Rahu and Rohini, they were starting to prepare for the election. Then during Rahu in Taurus side on Krittika, then they're starting to, win the election and things like that. And they're going to become like a congressman or a senator or something like that. Well, now as Rahu is in the Aries side of Krittika, it can go either two ways, but it's going to want to keep progressing and moving through it. So that means that as you get into that Rahu and Aries position, well, now they want to be the number one senator. They want to be the number one congressman. They don't want to work with others, my way or the highway. Or maybe they're like, I don't even want to be a congressman anymore because what I really want to be is the president or the governor. And this is only just a stepping stone. And that's what I talked about with the nature of this transit in general. Be grateful. It's all about gratitude. If you want this transit to be favorable for you, be grateful for what you have. Be grateful for the gifts that you've been given. Humble yourself. And because you're getting that double fire energy with Agni and now the Aries position, which it can be very Martian and intense, and now it can get radical. So you got the position of power, and now you want to abuse your position of power? No, you don't. And here's the positive side of this conjunction. Bhumayaha, the bearer of welfare, the bearer of support to each other, the bearer of support to humanity, the son of the earth. So as you get into this kind of Agni, more Mangal side with Aries on the Krittika, what can I do with my newly acquired position of power, with my newly acquired position of wealth, with my newly acquired position of success to the next level to benefit the world, to benefit others? How can I take care of this planet? How can I take care of my brothers on this planet, my sisters on this planet, my fellow humanity? How can I take care of animals? So it's really about, okay, now that you've been given this thing that you've wanted, what are you going to do with it? And you have this potential with that Rahu as it goes into the Aries side of Krittika to really have a positive and profound impact on other people's lives. Or it can go to your head. You can get overly egotistical and you can get radical and you can lose the position that you originally gained or actually cut yourself off from the potential of success as it kind of moves into Bharani, where you start to see abuses of power and things like that and finally getting called on it. So I like Rahu in Krittika, especially on the Taurus side. I don't really find it quite as favorable on the Aries side, but the really positive thing is with that strength that you've gotten, with that desire or goal that you've reached, now is the time to have that positive impact on the world and other people's lives in a really, really, really deep way. And so you're going to want to look at the position for the sun during the Aries side transit, and as well as Mars, because now Rahu is in the Mars ruled sign of Aries.
Right.
Now, this is just a brief introduction to the topic. I was very excited and enthusiastic about this topic. If you know me, I'm a huge fan of Rahu, and I'm one of the astrologers out there that wants to paint a positive picture of Rahu and a realistic side on the more difficult aspects of Rahu. So I hope that everyone had an opportunity to see the real benefit of this period, and they're getting more of a positive energy about this transit than some of the difficult things. But again, we have to keep in mind with the rise of power, there's some side effects that can come with that as well. With more success becomes more opportunity to do good, but also more opportunity to do wrong.
Yeah. So the takeaway is to be humble and be grateful.
Yeah.
Yeah. Always being grounded, no matter what you have or what you, accomplish.
100%. I think that's probably the primary message that I want to express to our community.
Yeah, that was wonderful. As always, that was very wonderful. Thank you, Kṣaṇāti. And we'll be back again very soon with our video through the ascendants, each ascendant.
Thank you, Navjeet. Hari Om. Om Namah Shivaya.